Why are there waiting lines? When we consider problems with waiting time, we have to first define a certain distinction. Waiting lines or queues may occur when expected demand rate exceeds expected supply rate for some limited period of time. This happens, for example, when you have constant capacity and demand has some seasonality. In this case, implied utilization is more than 100% for some time period. In this case, it is a case of seasonality, and we might be able to predict this ahead of time, prepare for this, either adjust capacity or just assume we know that the waiting will happen and how we will cope with it. This is the first type of waiting time or queues that we already dealt with in all the topics on managing capacity. The second example is when there is variability. When there is variability, waiting or queues may occur even if implied utilization is not more than 100%, is actually less and much less, even much less than 100%, right? So even though there is enough capacity to meet demand, we will see waiting time occurring for some units, for some customers or some products because of variability, either in processing or in arrival of demand. The second type is the focus. The second type of waiting time is the focus of this topic, right? This is where we focus on variability. And due to variability, we will see that sometimes customer or demand waits for the server for supply and sometimes the other way around. So the objectives of this topic are, first of all, to predict waiting time, or average waiting time, or generally waiting times of customers or units. Also, we want to derive some performance metrics that capture the service quality provided to the customer. And finally, we want to think of ways of reducing waiting time by adjusting capacity, by maybe redesigning the system, and by outlining opportunities to reduce variability. Our motivating case will be a company called Answer Services. Answer Services specializes in providing answering services for financial services, insurance companies, and medical practices. So we're going to consider a call center, and initially this will be a call center with one employee who's answering calls from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. An average service time, an average duration of the conversation that this representative, this employee has with customers who are calling is 4 minutes, and on average 12 calls arrive in every 60-minute time period. So if you could say, right, 60 minutes divided by 12 gives us one call every 5 minutes. So if we do the calculations, capacity that this server can cope with is, right, one call on average 4 minutes. So that means 60 over 4, we can cope with 15 calls per minute, right? This is the inverse, one call per 4 minutes. If you convert it to calls per hour, you get 15 calls per hour. And demand from this sentence is 12 calls per hour. So we are given capacity, we're given demand. As before, we can calculate the flow rate, which will be minimum of capacity and demand. And in this case, demand is smaller, so our flow rate will be 12 calls per hour. And you notice also we can calculate utilization, flow rate divided by capacity is 80%. And it looks like there should be no waiting. The system should cope with the demand. There would be no waiting if the system behaved as shown in this Gantt chart. If you had 12 callers exactly every hour, and they would call every 5 minutes, one person would call exactly once every 5 minutes, and every call would take exactly 4 minutes, this is what we would have. But obviously, this is an unrealistic situation. A much more realistic situation is where every caller calls at some random times. So we have actually the arrivals, or where the callers are dialing, right, our number. These are the times. And also we have different service times. So this is arrival time, this is service time, and notice some callers take 7 minutes, some callers take as short as 2 minutes. And the actual Gantt chart showing what is happening is shown here. And what we see here is, right, one person calls at exactly 7 a.m., they talk for about 5 minutes, and then nobody calls until maybe 7 or 8, right? 8 minutes or 7 minutes past 7. And this person takes longer. And then while this person is still talking, the third person calls. And of course, there is only one representative. And because of this, the person is not connected directly, but has to wait for the representative, for the employee to answer, because the employee can only talk to one person at a time. And while this person is waiting, actually, now the fourth caller calls, right? And at this moment, short moment in time, there are actually two callers waiting while this one is still being served. And so you see all the red bars here in this Gantt chart are indicating the waiting time, and the green bars indicate the service time. This is just a choice to indicate which one is which. And we can also see inventory. So sometimes there is one customer in the system, in this case being served, sometimes no customers. And there are moments like this point in time where there are 3 customers or even 4 customers at some point, at 2 points, right? 2 short periods. There are 4 customers. Every time when there is at least one customer, we're assuming the employee is talking to one of them, but any number above 1, these are the customers who are waiting for the employee and are on hold, perhaps listening to some music that is played over the phone. So, of course, this realistic process is behaving the way it is due to variability. And actually, there are 2 sources of variability here. One is random arrival of customers. The customers call whenever they want, and from the perspective of the system just experiences random calls at random times. And the other variability is variability in service times, which, right, both of those we could see here, right? The callers are not evenly distributed over the hour, and also the service times are not all equal. They have some variability. So some observations of this realistic service process. Although on average there is plenty of capacity, most customers wait considerable amount of time, up to even 10 minutes, right? There are some customers who wait here quite a long time, up to 10 minutes. Service is inconsistent also. Notice that some customers wait up to 10 minutes, while others do not wait at all. And despite long waiting times, right, and because of long queues, right? If there is long average waiting time, that must mean also there is long inventory when measured in the waiting line in the queue. Despite that, server is repeatedly idle. Server, which is the employee who's answering the phones, right, is idle here for a few minutes, idle here, idle here, idle here. So you have spikes when there is a lot of clients where suddenly the employee cannot cope, and you have times where the employee is underutilized when there is just few callers, and all of this due to randomness. So customer service representative, the reason for this is customer service representative can only serve one customer, and only he can serve, or she, if there is the customer and if the server or the employee is available, right? So for the service to occur, both the server and the client must be available at the same time. Capacity can never run ahead of demand. If we have available capacity, we cannot somehow answer the customer's demand that will call in a few minutes. We have to, right? We can only answer the question when the customer calls, right? There is no build to stock in other ways as we have in manufacturing. And also demand can run ahead of capacity, meaning that customers, 5 customers can call at the same time, right? And in this case, the queue builds up. Right? So it's a little bit opposite to in typical manufacturing and sales, where we actually have capacity that runs ahead and produces ahead of demand, and then we hope the demand occurs, right? We build to stock. In this case, in the case of service, we have the opposite situation where demand may run ahead of capacity. And so the inventory that builds up is actually the customers who are in the queue. So actually, the queue is a buffer that decouples supply from demand in this case.